you're here, ready to go deeper, great. Welcome to this deep dive. We've got some fascinating material you sent our way, Chapter 3, titled Faith, Visualization of, and Belief in Attainment of Desire.
Yeah, quite a title.
It is. Our mission today is to really get to grips with the author's thinking here. We're going to explore their perspective on faith as this crucial second step towards achieving what you want.
Right.
And how it all ties into making your desires, well, a reality.
Exactly. And this chapter positions faith not just as, a hopeful feeling, but as a powerful force you can actively engage with.
Okay.
So we'll be looking closely at how the author connects faith to our thoughts, the subconscious mind, and this idea of autosuggestion, the practical techniques they propose for actually cultivating it.
Okay, so the author jumps right in with this really strong image. Faith is the head chemist of the mind. When I read that, it really painted a picture. Faith being something active, not passive. What did you make of that analogy?
Well, what's interesting about that image is how it suggests faith is a catalyst, right? Something that actively transforms your thoughts. The author explains that when you infuse your thoughts with faith, it's like you're creating a specific compound that your subconscious mind immediately recognizes. Think of it as directing your mental energy with a special ingredient, faith.
So it's not just a general wish. The faith component gives it a particular potency.
Yeah.
Like a signal the subconscious picks up on.
Precisely. And the author goes on to say that this faith-infused thought is then translated by the subconscious into what they call a spiritual equivalent.
Okay.
And sent on to infinite intelligence. Now, listeners might interpret infinite intelligence in different ways, maybe a universal consciousness, maybe the untapped power of their own mind.
Sure, could be many things.
But the key here is the author's assertion that faith acts as this conduit, this link.
Right. It sets up faith as this really pivotal link in the chain from just a thought to whatever your ultimate goal is.
Yeah.
Now, alongside faith, the author brings in these other sort of big hitters, love and sex, as these really powerful positive emotions. What's the thinking behind this emotional power trio?
Well, if we look at it from the author's perspective, they're really highlighting the energetic dimension of our thoughts.
Okay.
They suggest that faith, love, and sex are emotions that carry a particularly strong vibrational frequency, you could say. So when you combine these feelings with your thoughts, it's like amplifying their signal, gives them a much stronger pull on your subconscious mind.
So it's not just thinking something intellectually. It's about charging that thought with genuine feeling.
Right.
And these three emotions are presented as the most potent chargers.
Exactly. And the author is careful to distinguish between them. They clarify that love and faith operate on a psychic or, spiritual level,
Right.
while sex is rooted more in our physical, biological drive.
Got it.
The author's proposition is that intentionally blending these different types of powerful energy creates a very direct pathway to the subconscious mind and subsequently to this infinite intelligence.
Okay, so we understand the power of faith and these accompanying emotions, but what if faith doesn't come naturally? How do you actually cultivate it? That's where autosuggestion comes into play, doesn't it?
This is a really crucial point because the author insists that faith isn't some innate gift that some people have and others don't. They clearly state that faith is a state of mind, and like any state of mind, it can be deliberately induced and strengthened.
Okay.
And the primary tool for this, according to the author, is autosuggestion, essentially, consciously giving repeated instructions to your subconscious mind.
So it's a process of intentionally influencing your own thoughts and beliefs, but at a deeper level.
Precisely. The author uses a really practical example here, relating it to the listener's potential goal of, say, achieving financial success.
Right.
They suggest that by repeatedly affirming your belief in your ability to achieve this desire, by constantly telling your subconscious mind that you will succeed, you begin to, convince it. And this conviction, in turn, solidifies into faith, which then fuels your actions and helps you develop the necessary plans.
It's almost like you're training your subconscious to believe in your goals as much as you consciously do, maybe even more so.
That's a good way to put it. The author even acknowledges that describing this feeling of unwavering faith to someone who hasn't experienced it is challenging.
Yeah.
Like trying to explain color to a blind person. But their core message is that through the consistent and intentional application of these principles, particularly the repetition of affirmations, you can voluntarily develop this powerful state of mind.
And to really drive home the impact of these repeated thought patterns, the author includes that quote from the criminologist about the progression towards becoming a criminal. It's a pretty powerful, if unsettling analogy.
It is stark, yeah, but it effectively illustrates how the subconscious mind operates, doesn't it?
It does.
That progression from initial revulsion to eventual acceptance and even embrace of criminal behavior just through repeated exposure and thought, well, it mirrors how any consistently repeated thought impulse, positive or negative, can be accepted and acted upon by the subconscious.
Right.
It really highlights the idea that our minds are constantly being shaped by the thoughts we dwell on.
Which brings us right back to the power of emotionalized thoughts.
Yeah.
It's not just the repetition, it seems, but the feeling you attach to those thoughts that really accelerates their impact, right?
Exactly. The author emphasizes that when you combine a thought with a strong emotion, especially faith, it doesn't just linger in your conscious mind.
Okay.
It immediately starts the process of finding its physical equivalent in the real world. The feeling component injects energy and vitality into your thoughts, making them much more potent. And while faith, love, and sex are highlighted as powerful amplifiers for positive aspirations, the author makes a really important point. Any emotion, positive or negative, can act as a catalyst to impress a thought upon the subconscious mind.
That's a crucial distinction. So while we want to intentionally cultivate positive emotions, we also need to be really mindful of the negative emotions we might be inadvertently feeding our subconscious.
Precisely. Just as positive beliefs, consistently held and emotionally charged, can pave the way for positive outcomes.
Yeah.
Negative beliefs, if they're allowed to take root and are fueled by negative emotions, can unfortunately create what people often perceive as bad luck or misfortune.
Right, they blame external factors.
Exactly. But the author argues that many individuals who resign themselves to poverty or failure are unknowingly perpetuating those very conditions through the power of negative autosuggestion.
So how do we actively take control of this process? How do we consciously direct our subconscious towards our goals?
Well, the author advocates for intentionally presenting your desires to your subconscious mind with a strong sense of expectation and unwavering belief.
Okay.
They even use the intriguing concept of deceiving the subconscious mind through autosuggestion.
Deceiving. How so?
By acting and feeling as if you have already achieved your desired outcome.
Ah, okay. It's like embodying the success you envision even before it's physically manifested.
That's the essence of it. By vividly imagining and emotionally embracing the reality of your fulfilled desire during autosuggestion, you make that deception, if you want to call it that, more convincing to your subconscious. The author suggests that the subconscious mind, which operates without critical reasoning in this context, will then begin to orchestrate events and guide you towards the most direct and practical means of achieving that reality, provided that the initial command is given with genuine belief and faith.
But the author makes it really clear that simply reading about this isn't enough, right? It requires active participation and consistent effort.
Absolutely. The ability to effectively blend faith with your subconscious commands is not something you can passively learn. It's a skill that develops through deliberate experimentation and consistent practice. The author draws a parallel with negative influences. Just as associating with negative environments can shape your thinking, consciously and repeatedly suggesting faith to your subconscious mind will cultivate that quality.
So you're actively programming it.
Yes. The key is to actively foster positive emotions and consciously work to eliminate negative ones, because a mind that is predominantly positive becomes fertile ground for faith to flourish, and for your subconscious instructions to be readily accepted and acted upon.
It's interesting how the author addresses the topic of religion here. They're not dismissing faith, obviously, but they offer a rather specific perspective on how it's often taught.
Yeah, what stands out is the author's critique of traditional religious teachings that often emphasize having faith without providing, concrete methods for actually developing it.
Like, how do you do it?
Exactly. The author's stated aim in this chapter is to demystify faith, to present it not as some abstract theological concept, but as a tangible psychological principle that can be understood and deliberately cultivated through self-suggestion.
So, for the author, faith is less about, say, divine intervention and more about a powerful state of mind that we have the agency to create within ourselves. And they certainly emphasize its significance with these really powerful pronouncements.
Oh, indeed. The author uses some incredibly potent language to define faith. They describe it as the eternal elixir, the very foundation upon which all riches are built.
Wow.
The bedrock of miracles and mysteries that defy scientific explanation, the ultimate weapon against failure.
Strong words.
Very. They go on to say it's the chemical that allows us to communicate directly with this infinite intelligence through prayer, the transformer of ordinary thought into spiritual energy, and the very means by which we can harness the cosmic power of this universal intelligence. These are really significant claims.
Huge claims. And the author asserts that the validity of all these claims can be personally verified through the consistent practice of autosuggestion. How does one actually go about proving this for themselves, according to the text?
Well, the author's argument hinges on the well-documented psychological phenomenon that we tend to internalize and believe whatever we repeatedly tell ourselves.
Right, repetition breeds belief.
Exactly. It's the basis of many learning processes, and unfortunately can also lead to the acceptance of false information if repeated often enough. The author suggests that by consciously and consistently repeating affirmations related to your desires, infused with emotion, you begin to program your subconscious mind to accept these statements as truth.
Okay.
And as these beliefs take hold, they influence your actions, your perceptions, and ultimately shape your reality. The idea is that you become what you dominantly think about, especially those thoughts that are intentionally planted and nurtured with feeling.
This also connects to the idea they present about thoughts acting as magnetic forces, doesn't it?
Exactly. The author describes thoughts that are charged with emotion as becoming magnetic, attracting similar or resonating thoughts from what they call the ether, essentially, a cosmic field of vibration.
The ether.
They use the analogy of planting a seed. A thought imbued with emotion is like a magnetized seed planted in fertile ground. It will germinate, grow, and eventually dominate your mental landscape.
And this ether is seen as containing both positive and negative vibrations, so we need to be mindful of what kind of mental signals we're sending out, presumably.
Precisely. The author suggests that this universal field contains vibrations associated with everything from fear and poverty to prosperity and success.
All possibilities.
Right. And the human mind, acting like a receiver, constantly tunes into and attracts vibrations that align with its dominant thought patterns. This reinforces the idea that focusing on lack will tend to draw more of that into your experience, while focusing on abundance will have the opposite effect.
Which leads directly to the practical advice of consciously planting the seeds of our desired outcomes through consistent repetition. Makes sense.
Exactly. Since the mind tends to gravitate towards and amplify what it habitually thinks about, the author stresses the importance of consciously planting positive ideas, especially your definite chief aim, through repeated affirmation.
Okay.
This is why they strongly recommend writing it down, memorizing it, and reciting it aloud daily to ensure that these positive thought vibrations reach the subconscious mind and begin to take root and influence your actions.
Now, the author also acknowledges that we're all influenced by our surrounding environment and the prevailing thought vibrations. That can be tough. How do we overcome negative environmental influences and stay focused on our goals?
This is where the cultivation of self-confidence through autosuggestion becomes paramount, according to the author.
Right.
They urge listeners to make a conscious decision to rise above any negative influences in their environment and to actively take control of shaping their own lives. They identify a lack of self-confidence as a significant barrier to success and propose a specific method for transforming timidity into courage through the deliberate use of positive self-talk.
Okay, how?
These positive thought impulses need to be consciously formulated, written down, memorized, and repeatedly affirmed until they become deeply ingrained in the subconscious mind.
And this brings us to the author's very detailed self-confidence formula. Let's walk through those steps. It seemed quite specific.
It is. The formula consists of 5 key components. First, you must firmly believe in your ability to achieve your clearly defined purpose in life.
Okay, the definite purpose again.
Exactly. And commit to persistent, continuous action towards its realization.
Right. Action is key.
Second, recognize that the dominant thoughts in your mind will eventually manifest in physical form. Therefore, dedicate 30 minutes each day to concentrating on the person you intend to become.
Visualization.
By creating a clear mental picture of that future self. Yes, visualization.
Got it. 30 minutes daily.
Third step involves understanding that persistent desires will eventually find a way to express themselves in reality. So you need to demand of yourself daily for at least 10 minutes the development of self-confidence.
Okay, a daily demand for confidence.
Fourth, it's crucial to have a written statement of your definite chief aim and to maintain unwavering persistence in its pursuit. No giving up.
Persistence, okay. And the final step. It seemed to focus on ethics.
Yes, the fifth step underscores that lasting success is built on a foundation of truth and justice in all your dealings.
Mhm.
It involves committing to transactions where all parties benefit, attracting the cooperation of others through a spirit of service, eliminating negative emotions like hatred, envy, jealousy, selfishness, and cynicism.
Cleaning house mentally.
Pretty much. And fostering a belief in both yourself and your fellow human beings. The author even instructs you to sign this formula, commit it to memory, and repeat it aloud every day with complete faith in its power to transform your thoughts and actions.
Wow, that's quite a comprehensive formula.
Mhm.
And it's interesting how the author points out that the underlying mechanism, autosuggestion, is still not fully understood by science, even back then.
Well, what's significant is that the author acknowledges the somewhat mysterious nature of autosuggestion, referring to it as an unexplained law of nature.
Right.
However, they emphasize that its lack of a complete scientific explanation doesn't negate its power. Not at all.
Hmm.
They highlight its dual potential. When used constructively, it can lead to remarkable achievements. But when applied negatively, often unconsciously through negative self-talk and limiting beliefs, it can result in failure and unhappiness.
Yeah.
This really underscores the profound impact our internal dialogue has on our external reality.
And they stress that the subconscious mind itself is neutral in this process.
Hmm.
It doesn't judge the quality of thoughts we feed it, it just acts on the instructions it receives.
Exactly. The author likens the subconscious mind to a neutral chemical laboratory that readily processes whatever material our thought impulses we provide. It will translate fear-based thoughts into tangible outcomes just as readily as it will act on thoughts fueled by courage or faith. This reinforces the responsibility we have to consciously choose and cultivate the thoughts that align with our desired outcomes.
To illustrate the potential for negative autosuggestion, the author shares those rather unsettling examples, like the concept of suggestive suicide and the story of Joseph Grant, the bank official.
Yeah, those examples serve as stark and frankly sobering reminders of the immense power of our beliefs and the impact of repeated negative thoughts. The case of Joseph Grant, who mentally succumbed to the belief of disgrace leading to death, well, it powerfully illustrates how deeply ingrained negative suggestions can manifest in physical reality. The term mental suicide really highlights the destructive potential of our own minds when dominated by negative beliefs.
It really does. The author then uses the analogy of electricity, which can be harnessed for both constructive and destructive purposes depending on how it's understood and applied. Seems apt.
It's a very fitting analogy, I think. Just as understanding and proper handling of electricity can power industries and illuminate our lives, so too can understanding and consciously directing the principle of autosuggestion lead to positive and constructive outcomes.
Right.
Conversely, allowing fear, doubt, and disbelief to dominate our thoughts will be used by autosuggestion to create corresponding negative realities, much like misusing electricity can lead to destructive consequences.
And the author expresses a really firm conviction in the truth and power of autosuggestion, comparing it to something as undeniable as basic arithmetic like 2 + 2 = 4.
Their conviction is very clear, yes. They use the analogy of the wind and sailing to illustrate how autosuggestion acts as a constant force,
Right.
either lifting us towards our goals or dragging us down, depending entirely on the direction of our dominant thoughts. The inclusion of that poem further reinforces the crucial role of mindset in determining our success. It's all in the state of mind.
Yeah, I remember that poem. It's an encouraging message, though, this idea that within each of us lies this sleeping seed of achievement, just waiting to be awakened.
Absolutely. The author really seeks to empower the listener by highlighting this untapped potential that resides within everyone, comparing it to a master musician who can draw forth beautiful music from an instrument. It suggests that greatness isn't something external we need to acquire, but something internal waiting to be activated.
And they bring in the example of Abraham Lincoln's relatively late success, attributing it to a significant personal experience that sparked his inner genius.
Yeah, what's particularly insightful about the Lincoln example is how the author connects his transformation to a profound emotional experience, his love for Anne Rutledge.
Right.
They suggest that this powerful emotion acted as a catalyst, awakening his dormant potential and propelling him towards his remarkable achievements. It really underscores the vital role of strong emotions, particularly love, in energizing our thoughts and attracting positive opportunities.
They even touch on the often unseen influence of a woman's love in the lives of many accomplished men. It was an interesting aside.
Yeah, the author's observation, based on their research, that the love of a woman often plays a significant role in the success of men. Well, it suggests that this powerful emotion can create a supportive and inspiring environment, fostering a favorable field of magnetic attraction, as they put it, for positive and higher vibrations. It's an interesting perspective on the power of human connection and emotional support.
Then the author broadens the scope,
Right.
looking at the power of faith in action through historical and contemporary figures like Jesus and Mahatma Gandhi.
Right. These examples serve to illustrate the extraordinary power of faith operating on a grand scale. The author points to the foundations of Christianity as being rooted in faith, even if, in their view, its true essence is sometimes misunderstood or not fully practiced. They suggest that the miracles attributed to Jesus were, in their view, manifestations of his unwavering faith. Then, they highlight Mahatma Gandhi as a more recent example of someone who wielded the power of faith to achieve monumental change, demonstrating that it can be a force more potent than military might in influencing the hearts and minds of millions.
It's a powerful argument, isn't it? For the tangible impact of what might seem like an intangible quality. And the author even ventures into speculating about the future role of faith in the world of business.
Yes, the author envisions a future where the business world undergoes a significant transformation, moving away from reliance on force and fear towards principles of faith and cooperation.
Interesting.
They suggest that the lessons learned from economic downturns, often attributed to a lack of confidence and trust, will lead leaders to adopt a more human-centered approach, fostering genuine collaboration and shared prosperity, where employees are seen as valuable partners rather than mere cogs in a machine.
They're quite critical of what they see as the dehumanizing aspects of the machine age and its traditional approach to labor, aren't they?
Yes, definitely. The author critiques the impersonal nature of industrialization and advocates for a future where the well-being and contentment of individuals become the primary focus.
Right.
They believe that the shift in emphasis, incorporating faith in human potential and fostering individual interest in work, will ultimately lead to greater productivity and more sustainable success.
And to really bring all of these concepts together and illustrate their real-world application, the author dedicates a significant portion of the chapter to the story of the formation of United States Steel back in 1900. This is presented as a prime example of intangible desire being transmuted into tangible reality through the power of faith.
Absolutely. This detailed narrative serves as a really compelling case study. The author sets the stage by emphasizing the key principles that were at play. Charles M. Schwab's initial vision.
Right, Schwab.
The unwavering faith he had in that vision, the development of a concrete plan, the decisive actions he took, his remarkable persistence, and his burning desire to see it through.
All the elements we've discussed.
Exactly. The author explicitly states that this story demonstrates how an intangible idea, fueled by faith and determination, can be transformed into a massive physical entity like U.S. Steel.
It's almost unbelievable, though, that such a colossal corporation began as simply an idea in the mind of one individual, Charles Schwab.
That's precisely the point the author wants to underscore. Despite any skepticism about the possibility of creating something from nothing, the story of U.S. Steel powerfully illustrates that the initial concept, nurtured by Schwab's faith, intense desire, vivid imagination, and unwavering persistence, that was the fundamental driving force. The existing steel mills and physical assets were, in a sense, secondary to the power of that original idea and the profound conviction with which it was communicated and pursued, ultimately leading to an estimated, $600 million profit through the consolidation alone.
Just staggering. So the core lesson from the story of United States Steel is that true wealth and significant achievements really do originate with a thought. And it's faith that allows us to overcome any perceived limitations in bringing that thought to life.
Exactly. The author concludes this whole section by reiterating that the potential for creating wealth and achieving significant goals is ultimately limited only by the boundaries of our own minds.
Right.
And that faith acts as the key to unlocking and transcending those limitations. They urge the listener to remember this powerful principle as they pursue their own ambitions and highlight Schwab's relatively humble beginnings before he conceived and acted on his groundbreaking idea. He wasn't always this titan of industry.
Well, this has been an incredibly thorough deep dive into Chapter 3. I feel like we've really unpacked it. We've explored the author's concept of faith as this potent mental catalyst.
Mm.
The crucial role of our emotions, the practical application of autosuggestion, the potential pitfalls of negative thinking, that comprehensive self-confidence formula.
Yeah, quite detailed.
And that truly illustrative story of the creation of United States Steel. It seems we've covered all the main ideas, stories, insights, and examples presented in the chapter.
Absolutely. I think we have. We've delved into the author's perspective on faith as a tangible and cultivatable force that, when combined with strong desire and persistent action, can indeed translate aspirations into reality. We've examined the interconnectedness of thought, emotion, and the subconscious mind, all operating under the powerful influence of belief.
So as you, the listener, take all this in, I want you to maybe consider this. What is that sleeping seed of achievement within you? What's that desire that maybe feels almost impossible right now?
A big dream.
Yeah. And what small, consistent steps can you begin to take, starting right now, maybe even today, to cultivate the kind of unwavering faith we've discussed, to nurture that seed and help bring it into full bloom?
That's a great takeaway.
That's your challenge, your food for thought from this deep dive. Thanks for being with us.